This video is going to cover the topic of calculating percentages. Be sure to have the date and topic at the top of your page. The essential question, which should also be on your page, is what strategy can we use to calculate percentages of a whole? Something we should obviously know by now from our studies with percentages so far is that percent means out of 100. And I know this is something we've talked about before, but it's important particularly for the strategy we're going to talk about, because it tells us that 25% is, of course, the fraction 25 out of 100, but more importantly for this strategy is that it can be written as the decimal 25 hundredths. Something else we've talked about in previous units is that the word of is sometimes an indication of multiplication. So for example, if I want 5/10 of 20, what I really know is that I could do 5/10 times 20, and I could calculate that out, and I would know that that would be 10, right? So the of is usually an indication of multiplication. So going back to our work with percentages, we're actually going to use both of these things. The fact that percent can be written as a decimal, and the fact that of lets us know that we can multiply. Say, for an example, we want 50% of 20, right? I could do a little bit of rewriting here and calculate this by saying, oh, I know that this is the decimal, 50%, and I know that this means multiply. So I would just have to do a quick little multiplication, quick calculation, to know that I'm really just multiplying 5/10 times 20 to get 10. So 50% of 20 is 10. That's a really quick way that people in real life calculate percentages. And I know this is a really obvious answer, right? You might be thinking, I don't have to do all that to know what 50% of 20 is, right? Half of 20 is 10. But we're going to do this strategy with a few more just to kind of see how it works. Imagine, for example, that there are 40 people and 25% of them are wearing a hat. And your job is to figure out what 25% of 40 is. We can just do a quick rewrite, right? We know that 25% is 25 hundredths. We know that of tells us we can multiply, and so we're really just here with a multiplication question. 25 hundredths times 40. When I do out my multiplication, right, I can see that 25% of 40 is the number 10. Let's try just a few more before we finish this video. And remember, of course, we'll practice this more in class, but let's give this a try here. This one might be a little bit less obvious with mental math. So take a moment and recalculate this or reset this up, right? With 60% of 310, you're going to want to write this as a decimal, and then you're going to multiply it by 310. So take a moment, calculate it for yourself, pause the video, and then we'll see how you did. How'd you do? Hopefully, you were able to find that the answer was 186, right? And I could do that by just a quick multiplication. 60 hundredths, or 6/10, times 310. Let's try another. This time, take a moment to do 42% of 64. And again, my first step is going to be to turn this into 42 hundredths and multiply it by 64. So go ahead and find that calculation. How'd you do? Did you find 26 and 88 hundredths? This would be a good strategy to use in real life if you wanted to find 42% of a bill, which is $64, right? You'd be able to calculate this pretty quickly to find it's $26.88. And lastly, for your turn, let's use this multiplying decimals strategy to find 3% of 28. So maybe it's 3% of $28, whatever the case may be. I will remind you that 3%, right, has a decimal here, and so you'll have to move that decimal twice to figure out your decimal that you'll be using to multiply. So just kind of keep that in mind. Let me just put a little thing around here to remind you of that. Okay, so go ahead and solve that. Bring any questions you might have to class. We'll, of course, be practicing this more together. And know that the essential question of this video was what strategy we can use to calculate a percentage. And this is the one that we will use most frequently in our day-to-day real lives. So this is an important one for us to be practicing. So just know that we'll be doing more together.